الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Verily the praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him, and we seek His help, and we ask for His forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our souls and from our sinful deeds. Whomever Allah guides, none can misguide, and whomever He leaves astray, none can guide. I bear witness that there is no one and nothing worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is one, having no partner. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His slave and messenger. O you who believe, fear Allah as you should be feared, but die not except as Muslims. O mankind, fear your Lord who created you from a single soul, and from Him His mate, and from those two spread many men and women. And fear Allah through whom you demand your mutual rights, and do not cut ties of kinship. Verily Allah sees all that you do. O you who believe, fear Allah and always speak the truth. He will direct you to the righteous deeds and will forgive you your sins. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger has indeed achieved a great achievement. To proceed. Verily the most truthful speech is the Book of Allah. The best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the worst of affairs are the newly invented matters in religion. And every newly invented matter is a bid'ah, it's an innovation. And every bid'ah is misguidance, and every misguidance is in the hellfire. These are days of great worry and anxiety. Many of us, we are worried about our jobs. Some of us, we've already lost our jobs. And many of us, if not all of us, we are worried that we will suffer the same fate. And if the Prophet ﷺ was here now, if he was here with us today, what advice would he give us? What words would he say to us to remove our anxiety, to calm our fears? In fact, the Prophet ﷺ has already given us this advice. He gave us the advice that exactly fits our situation today. 14 centuries ago, he gave all of us advice that fits the situation that we face now today. He gave us advice in a hadith that the great scholar Ibn al-Jawzi, he said, تدبرت هذا الحديث فأدهشني وكنت أطيش فوا أسف من الجهل بهذا الحديث وقلة الفهم لمعناه. He said, I pondered over this hadith, these words of the Prophet ﷺ. So they amazed me until the point that I became lightheaded. I almost fainted from the weight and the amazing gravity of these words. فَوَا أَسَفَ, so woe to the one who is ignorant of this hadith and of the meaning of this hadith. Once the Prophet ﷺ, he was riding on his animal, his camel or his horse, and he had behind him a young boy, the boy named Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu. So he turned to him and he said, Ya ghulam, O young man, أَلَا أُعَلِّمُكَ كَلِمَاتٍ يَنْفَعُ اللَّهُ بِهِنْ. Shall I not teach you some words? Shall I not give you some advice? Perhaps Allah will benefit you with these words. Ibn Abbas said, Bala, of course, Ya Rasulullah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, he started his advice with these words, for Ibn Abbas and for all of us. احفظ الله يحفظ. Preserve Allah, Allah will preserve you. What does this mean? How can we preserve Allah? Allah doesn't need anything from us. He is free of any needs. The meaning of this is preserve the laws of Allah. Preserve the rules of Allah. Whatever Allah has made haram, stay away from it. Whatever Allah has made obligatory on you, go and do it. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated, preserve those rules. Preserve those laws. If you do this, what will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? يَحْفَظْكَ. He will preserve you. How will He preserve you? He will preserve and protect your wealth, your family, not only your children, your children's children, and their children. He will protect your job. He will protect your property. He will even protect your body. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will preserve and protect the physical bodies of those who preserve His rules. Once one of the scholars, his name was Al-Qadi al-Tayyib, Tahir bin Abdullah, rahimahullah. He lived until he was an old man. Until they said he was over 100 years old. But even when he reached this old age, he still had strength in his mind, in his intellect, and strength in his body. Some people may say, how can this be? Someone 100 years old and he has the strength? But I tell you, even one of my own teachers, to this day, one of my own teachers that I used to study with, he was in his 90s, not 100, but close. He was in his 90s, and the students used to come to his house from after Fajr until late in the night, each one coming, reading and studying with the Shaykh. And the Shaykh had more energy and more concentration and more focus than any of the students. And he was in his 90s. But this man, Al-Qadi al-Tayyib, he was over 100. So once he was on a ship, and when the ship was approaching the dock, normally you wait for the ship to reach the dock, and then they put the piece of wood, the gangplank, and you walk off. Al-Tayyib, he didn't wait. He jumped off the ship onto the land. So the people, they said, what are you doing? At your age, you need to take care of yourself. You can't act like this. You're not a young man. So Al-Qadi Ibn he said, هذه جوارح حفظناها عن المعاصي حفظناها عن المعاصي في الصغر فحفظه الله علينا في الكبر. These limbs, we used to preserve them, we used to protect them, we used to guard them from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we were young, we used to protect our bodies from disobeying Allah. And so Allah has preserved our bodies for us in old age. We stayed away from disobeying Allah when we were young. And now we see the fruit of that when we approach our old age. But more importantly, not only does Allah preserve our wealth, preserve our jobs, more important than this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves our deen, the one who preserves the rules of Allah. Allah preserves His religion and preserves His iman. Once, one of the tabi'een, Al-Hasan al-Basri, he was talking about the people who do sins, these people who spend their days and their nights disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said about them, هَانُوا عَلَيْهِ فَعَصَوْهُ وَلَوْ عَزُّوا عَلَيْهِ لَعَصَمَهُمْ. He said, these people, they don't mean anything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These people that you see, busy disobeying Allah, busy with sin, they don't mean anything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why He has allowed them to disobey Him. But if لَوْ عَزُّوا عَلَيْهِ, if they were precious, if they were special, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved them, then He will be protecting them from falling into these sins. So those of us who are busy drowning in his sins or her sins, they should be aware and be afraid that maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is leading him to go down the dark path. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowing him to commit these sins because there is evil waiting for him on the day of judgment. Then the Prophet he continued. So he told Ibn Abbas, احفظ الله تجده أمامك. Preserve Allah. When you preserve the rules of Allah, you will find Allah in front of you. You will find Allah in front of you. What does this mean? All of us, we are on a journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are all moving forward towards our deaths and towards the afterlife. So the one whom Allah is in front of him, this means Allah is guiding him to this great path, guiding him to do good deeds, guiding him to Jannah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَن يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ. Whoever has iman in Allah, whoever believes in Allah, Allah guides his heart. He gives him guidance. Once, when Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, he was on his deathbed, and some of his students came to visit him, and they said, Ya Imam, who do you advise us to now study with? Who should we go now and ask our questions to, now that you are passing away? So he mentioned a certain scholar. So some of the students, they objected. They said, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لَهُ اتِّسَعٌ فِي الْعِلْمِ. This man, he doesn't know that much. He's a scholar, but he doesn't have as much knowledge as you. Because Imam Ahmad, he used to memorize 1 million hadith. And he used to say, I know these 1 million hadith the way that you know Al-Fatiha. I can recite them with my eyes closed. So they said, this man, he doesn't have that much knowledge. So Imam Ahmad, he said, إِنَّهُ رَجُلٌ صَالِحٌ مِثْلُهُ يُوَفَّقُ بِإِصَابَةِ الْحَقِّ. He is a righteous man. Someone like him will be guided to the right answer. He will be guided by Allah to give you the right answer, to give you the right fatwa. Then the Prophet ﷺ continued. He told Ibn Abbas, تَعَرَّفْ إِلَى اللَّهِ فِي الرَّخَاءِ يَعْرِفْكَ فِي الشِّدَّةِ. Get to know Allah in times of ease, and Allah will know you when you have your time of hardship. Get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of ease. Make a relationship with Allah when things are going well for you. If you still have your job, now is the time to make qiyam al-layl. Now is the time to get up in the night. If you can't get up in the early hours of the morning, then make qiyam al-layl after Isha. Make it in the first part of the night. But at some point in the night, make some time for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you don't make qiyam al-layl now, when will you make it? If in these times of anxiety, of fear, of worry, you don't turn back to Allah, you're not willing to stand up and worship Allah, then when will you do it? Now is the time to give sadaqah, to make a relationship with the Quran, to read and study the Quran. And most of all, now is the time to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, من سره أن يستجيب الله له عند الشدائد والكرب فليكثر الدعاء في الرخاء. He said, the one who is happy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to his dua, that Allah answers his dua when he has trouble, when he has hardship, then let him increase in making dua when things are going well. Let him increase in making dua in times of ease, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remember you and remember that how obedient you were and grateful you were before the hardship. Many of us, we worry about our jobs. And we are looking around for any means, for any person who can help us. So if someone came to one of us and said, the CEO of your company, the manager of your company, the boss, he has a special majlis, a special time, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, before Fajr. He's in his office, and he is quiet, he is alone. He has no meetings, no one to disturb him. Maybe if you will speak to him at this time, you can speak to him about your job, speak to him about your situation. If someone said this to us, we would not sleep that night. We would make sure we were awake the whole night, and then we'd go wearing our best clothes, and we'd go early to go meet this man, because we think that this person may be able to save our job. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He descends in the last third of every night, and He says, who is the one who makes dua to me so that I can answer him? Who is the one who wants to ask from me so that I can give him? Who is the one asking forgiveness from me so that I can forgive him? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His office hours all throughout the day, but you can see Him and speak to Him in private in that last third of the night. So if you are truly concerned about your job, if you are really worried, then why don't you go and see Allah at this time? Why don't you set your alarm and go and wake up and worship Allah at this time? And then the Prophet ﷺ continued. So he said to Ibn Abbas, وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهَ وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. If you're going to ask anyone, then ask only Allah. And if you're going to seek help from anyone, then seek help only from Allah. These words, we say these words, each one of us, every single day, and every single prayer. Because we say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Oh Allah, only you do we worship, and you are the only one we seek help from. The creation will not help us. Our co-workers cannot help us. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can preserve your job for you. And not only this, if a Muslim is concerned about his wealth, he is concerned about his future, he has anxiety and worry, then he should learn the du'as that the Prophet ﷺ taught us for situations like this. The Prophet taught us specific du'as for the situations that we face. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَا أَصَابَ أَحَدًا قَطْ هَمٌّ وَلَا حُزْنٌ فَقَالَ اللَّهُمَّ إِنِّي عَبْدُكَ ابْنُ عَبْدِكَ ابْنُ أَمَتِكَ نَاصِيَتِي بِيَدِكَ مَاضٍ فِي حُكْمُكَ عَدْلٌ فِي قَضَاؤُكَ إِلَى آخِرِ الدُّعَاء. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, no slave, no person is afflicted with worry, anxiety, or sadness, except that he makes this dua saying, Oh Allah, I am your slave, the son of your female slave, the son of your female slave, and on, finishing the dua. The Prophet said, whoever makes this dua, إِلَّا أَذْهَبَ اللَّهُ هَمَّهُ وَحَزَنَهُ وَأَبْدَلَهُ فَرْحًا. He said, no one makes this dua, except that Allah will remove his anxiety, and remove his grief, and remove his sadness, and replace it with happiness. So when the Sahaba, they heard this, they said, Ya Rasulullah, أَلَا نَتَعَلَّمُهَا? Should we not learn this dua, Ya Rasulullah? Should we all not learn this dua? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Bala, yes, of course. يَنْبَغِي لِمَنْ سَمِعَهَا أَنْ يَتَعَلَّمَهَا. It is appropriate that everyone who hears of it, they should learn it. So if you're concerned about your job, now is the time to learn these du'as. Learn these words that the Prophet ﷺ taught you for your own benefit. And then the Prophet ﷺ continued. He said to Ibn Abbas, قَدْ جَفَّ الْقَلَمُ بِمَا هُوَ كَائِنٌ. He said the pen has dried with whatever will occur. What does this mean? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that one of the first things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created was the pen, al-qalam. And then he told the pen to write. So this pen, it said to Allah, Ya Allah, what should I write? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Uktub maqadira kulli shay'in hatta taqum as-sa'a. Write down the decree of everything, the destiny of everything, until the day of judgment. So everything that will occur, from our births to our deaths, all of it has already been written down and predetermined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people may say, if it's already written for me that I will keep my job or lose my job, then why should I make dua? If it's already written for me that I will be terminated tomorrow, or that I will suffer an illness, or that I will die, then what is the point of me making dua? If it's already written, it will already occur, whether I keep my job or I lose my job. We say to these people, the next time you have your food in front of you, your lunch or your dinner, don't pick up the spoon. Because if Allah has decreed for you to be hungry, you will be hungry. And if Allah has decreed for you to be full, you will be full. So why do you even lift your hand to eat? Whatever is decreed for you will happen. So this person will say, no, if I don't lift my hands, if I don't raise my hands and put the food in my mouth, how will the hunger go away? And so likewise we say, if you don't raise your hands and make dua, how will this calamity go away? Just as you don't accept the decree of Allah when it comes to your eating or drinking. When it's winter and it's cold, you don't say it's Allah's decree, it's cold, and then you go out half dressed. You put on a coat, you put on your jacket, to push away the cold. When it's hot, thinking hot, like it is here in the summer, you don't just sit in the house and say it's Allah's decree for it to be hot. You put on the AC and you put it as low as it can go to push away the heat. And so likewise, when the calamities occur, or before they occur, you make dua to Allah to push away these calamities, to push away these things, because they cause you pain, because they cause you fear and grief. Because Allah's destiny is based on cause and effect. Yes, Allah has written everything down, but this decree is based on cause and effect. The effect does not happen until you bring the cause. So if you want that your job is protected for you, or that you find another job in case you've already lost yours, you must make dua. Because dua is the greatest of the asbab, the greatest means to change what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for you. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلَوْ أَنَّ الْخَلْقَ كُلَّهُمْ جَمِيعًا أَرَادُوا أَن يَنْفَعُوكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَكْتُبْهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ لَمْ يَقْدِرُ عَلَيْكَ. He said that if all of the creation, كُلَّهُمْ جَمِيعًا, all of them, everyone, they came together to help you find another job, to help you keep your job. If all of creation, everyone came to help you, لَمْ يَكْتُبْهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not decreed this thing for you, لَمْ يَقْدِرُ عَلَيْكَ. They will not be able to help you. No one will be able to help you. وَإِنْ أَرَادُوا أَن يَضُرُّوكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَكْتُبْهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ لَمْ يَقْدِرُ عَلَيْكَ. And if they all come together to harm you, to take your job away, to make you removed from your position, they will not, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not written it, it will never happen. The creation cannot help you, they cannot harm you. All of these affairs are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some may say, if I got the letter from my boss saying I've been terminated, saying I've lost my job, this will not be easy for me to endure. This will not be easy for me to be patient with. But the Prophet ﷺ, he told Ibn Abbas in this advice, وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ فِي الصَّبْرِ عَلَى مَا تَكْرَهُ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And know that having patience with that which you hate, that which displeases you, in this is great good for you. And for the ones who find that this will be too difficult for them, the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, وَمَنْ يَتَصَبَّرْ يُصَبِّرْهُ اللَّهُ وَمَا أُعْطِيَ أَحَدٌ عَطَاءٌ خَيْرًا وَأَوْسَعَ مِنَ الصَّبْرِ. He said, whoever tries to have sabr, يَتَصَبَّرْ, he forces his soul to have sabr, to have patience, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him patience. if you try and you attempt to endure through this hardship, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you sabr. And no one has been given anything better or more comprehensive than having patience through hardships. So if one of us is given that notice, given that letter, or any of us faces a calamity, we are told we are sick, or someone we love is gravely ill, or whatever the calamity may be, we must know that sabr is obligatory upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made patience an obligation in times of hardship. Not to scream and to cry, not to be displeased, but to endure and be patient with the decree of Allah. Because in the decree of Allah is wisdom and hikmah. Through hardships, our hearts are softened. These hardships remove the hardness from our hearts. Through hardships and calamities, we are reminded of our previous sins, and so we make tawbah to Allah. But most of all, when someone goes through hardship, they return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They return back and remember their relationship with Allah. How many of us, feeling fear and worry over our jobs, we have made more dua than we used to make before? We are more concerned about our prayers than we used to be before. How many of us who have lost our jobs, we are now asking Allah, making dua every day after every prayer. Oh Allah, give me a better job than the one I lost. Oh Allah, don't let my family starve. Don't let me lose my home. Oh Allah, give me something better than what you have taken away. Some of the scholars, they said that a slave of Allah tastes the delight of worshiping Allah so much in his time of hardship that when that hardship is taken away, he only feels grief at the delight of that joy of worship that is taken away. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Ajaba amrul mu'min." He said, how amazing is the affair of the believer. When good happens to him, if he is healthy, if he is wealthy, he gives thanks to Allah, and this is good for him. But if he is given a trial, if he is made to be poor, if Allah causes him to be ill, then he shows sabr, he has patience, and this is also good for him. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه كل ذنب إنه ربي غفور رحيم. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he concluded this advice to Ibn Abbas. His final words, he said, وَأَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ وَأَنَّ الْفَرْجَ مَعَ الْكَرْبِ وَأَنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. He told Ibn Abbas, and these words apply for us as well, know that victory comes with sabr, and that relief comes with the trial itself. When Allah says the calamity, the relief from the calamity is following right behind. وَأَنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. And with every hardship will come ease. After the darkest part of the night breaks the dawn. The Prophet ﷺ made obligatory on us to have sabr. That if we are tested by Allah when it comes to our jobs, or our health, or our families, we must have patience. But there is a level even higher than this. There's something even better than having sabr. There is a level that very few Muslims are able to reach. And this is not only do they have sabr with the hardships, but they actually have rida. They are pleased and they have pleasure with the hardships. That they are pleased that whatever Allah wills for them, they are happy with it. So if Allah makes him rich, he's happy to be rich. If Allah makes him poor, he is happy to be poor. If Allah keeps him healthy, he is happy to be healthy. If Allah gives him cancer, he is happy to have cancer. Very few people can reach this level of Iman. So how do we reach it? This highest level. The scholar Ibn Rajab, he gave three advices, three ways. Three things we can do to reach this level of rida. The first, he said to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Put your trust in Allah. Just like you put your trust with the doctor. You know that when you are ill, when you are sick, either you or someone in your family, you go to the doctor, And the doctor may prescribe for you some harsh treatment, some painful treatment. He may inject you with needles, or stick catheters in sensitive places, or radiate you with radiation or chemicals, put you through all kinds of pain, and you suffer. But you endure that suffering, and you are pleased with that suffering, because you know that this doctor, he's doing it for your benefit. The pain you are going through is because the doctor wants to help you. He's doing something for your benefit. So likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He puts us through trials, and He gives us pain in order for our benefit, in order for us to reach higher levels of Iman. Sometimes He puts us through pain and takes away our job in order to give us a better job. Sometimes He gives us pain and puts us through sickness in order to give us better health after that. So just as we trust the doctor blindly, we don't ask questions. If the doctor says, stick out your hand, I'm going to inject you. The doctor says, stick out your hand, I'm going to inject this thing or that thing into your arm, into your leg. We submit, and we are pleased to submit. So likewise, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an order, gives us a command, afflicts us with a trial, we stick in our arm and we are happy to suffer any pain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inflicts, because we know that Allah is doing it for our benefit. He is the doctor of our souls, trying to cure us of the sicknesses in our hearts and in our souls. Number two, Ibn Rajab said that a person should remember the great reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for the one that He afflicts. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna 'idham al-jazaa'i ma'a 'idham al-bala." That the size of the reward is equal to the size of the trial. The one whom Allah tests harshly, severely, likewise He will have a huge, great reward. The one whom Allah gives a small trial to, he will get a small reward. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ إِذَا أَحَبَّ قَوْمًا ابْتَلَاهُمْ. And verily Allah, if He loves a people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He loves someone, ibtalahum, He gives him trials. He gives him hardship. He tests his faith. فَمَنْ رَضِيَ فَلَهُ الرِّضَى وَمَنْ سَخِطَ فَلَهُ السَّخْطُ. So the one who is pleased with Allah's decree, he has Allah's good pleasure. The one who is pleased, Allah is pleased with him. But the one who becomes angry at Allah's decree, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with him. So one should remember that if you lose your job, it's only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. It's only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to test you. Because Allah has something better for you in store. Whether it's a better job in this life or something even better for you in the afterlife. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah keeps testing His slaves again and again and again. And each time they are tested, their sins are erased and wiped away. Until finally He walks on the earth and there are no sins on Him. Finally, number three, and this is the most important point. Ibn Rajab, he said that the believer should always remember that one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Jameel. Allah is the most beautiful. Allah is the most beautiful. Inna Allah Jameelun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is the most beautiful. Not only is His essence beautiful, but all His actions are beautiful. His decree is beautiful. Everything that He decrees and decides for us is beautiful and has beauty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never does anything that is ugly. He never does anything that is hideous. So when a person remembers this beauty, it will remove the pain that he feels during his hardships. Just like in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam was so beautiful when the wife of his master, she was infatuated with him. And the news spread in the city that, oh, this woman, she's so infatuated with her slave. So she called the women of the city, these noble women, for a banquet. And then they sat down at the table, and she set the food in front of them. And then she gave each one a cutting knife, like a steak knife, to cut the food with. And then she went to Yusuf and said, go out in front of them. So when he went out, and they saw how beautiful he was, they cut their hands, but they didn't feel pain. They cut their hands, but they were so overwhelmed with his beauty that they didn't even realize they were cutting their hands, until finally they felt the blood dripping from their hands. So likewise, the believer, when he remembers that Allah is Al-Jameel, he remembers Allah is the most beautiful,
that everything He decrees for me is beautiful, then this will remove the pain, whatever pain he feels in his hardship, in his trial. One of the pious women of the past, her name was Rabi'a al-Adawiyya, rahimahullah. She used to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much. Once she tripped and she fell, and when she fell, she broke her finger. So she started to laugh. So the people, they said to her, "Why are you laughing? You fell down, you broke your finger, and you start to laugh." She said, "Ansani ladhatu thawabihi mararatu anamihi." She said, the delight of Allah's reward for this hardship made me forget the pain and the bitterness of breaking my finger. Remembering Allah's reward removed the bitterness of the pain that I felt. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who have sabr and have rida and justice. Allahumma inna nas'aluka rida ba'da al-qada. Allahumma inna nas'aluka rida ba'da al-qada. Allahumma inna nas'aluka rida ba'da al-qada. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna 'ala an-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu 'alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik 'ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa 'ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين، اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين، اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين ودمر اعداء الدين وانصر عبادك الموحدين. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا انفسنا وان لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين.